Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another video. I hope you're well. Today we're going to do a tier list video on all the season themes that have appeared in Diablo 3 since season 14. 15th of June 2018 is the first one we got. That covers season 14. We're going to go all the way to the current season, season 27, which I do hope you are enjoying. But yeah, it's going to be my opinion. S tier is obviously going to be the best. These are the seasons that I really enjoyed, that I would quite happily played forever, or had them, I guess, maybe incorporated in the main game. A tier is the very good tier. Again, maybe no qualms if some of these things made their way into the game at some point. B tier, I'm going to say, fairly decent, good, maybe not quite the best, but an okay season. C tier, we're just going to call that meh. It's like pretty dull, not really anything to write home about, shall we say. And then D tier is going to be epic fail. So we're going to go through all of them, and I would like your input on this. So let me know, what are your top 3 seasons? So let me know just your favourite if you want. If you can pick 3 that you would like to play again at some point, I guess would maybe be the way to do it. Blizzard might watch this video. The feedback might be useful for whether we get a repeat season theme in the future. It might give them some indication as to which seasons we think are the most popular. So running them through, we've got the Goblin season, Bounty season, Rogue season, Legacy of Nightmares, Triune Rings, the Killstreak season, Open Cube, the Elemental season, that's what the Snowball is, because that was the goofy season with the Snowballs, Shadow Clone 4th Cube slot, Follower Rework, Ethereals, Soul Shards, Echoing Nightmares, and then currently we've got the Angelic crucibles. So we're going to go through all of them, and we're going to chat about them. So I guess we start going back in time to the 15th of June 2018, when we got our first season theme, and this was the Greed's Realm season. Double Goblins, straight in the D tier with this one. At the time I remember thinking, wow, we're actually going to get some season themes. I'm quite excited, this is going to be pretty cool, and this is probably about as de minimis an impact on the game as we probably could have. All that happened with this, if you encountered a treasure goblin in Sanctuary, you got a second one. We'd had it as a weekend buff previously, we've had it as mid-season buffs moving forwards. The only advantage you can really see out of this is you got a little bit of extra gems, which is really neither here nor there. And the other one would be if you didn't have all the pets in the game. You did actually get 2 pets and 2 pet goblins. Aside from that, there was no extra chance to get the rainbow wings, there was no second portal to Whimsyshire or anything like that. So ultimately, it was great to see a season theme. Obviously, I think looking back now, we were quite right to be optimistic for the future season themes. But yeah, this was D tier totally. It made almost no impact on the game. Didn't motivate me to play a season past the just general reset and for the fun of it. And I doubt it brought too many people back. Next up, we've got Bounties. Now, Bounty is a chocolate bar in the UK. I presume you have them in the US. I don't know if someone can let me know. Coconut-based chocolate. Ugh, I don't like it. In fact, I don't like it as much as I don't like doing bounties in Diablo 3. So the bounty season, I think this is the boon of the Horodrim, maybe. We got double bounties. So again, it's very similar to the double goblins. We'd had this as previous buffs, just playing the game, for weekends. We've had it, again, mid-season buffs, we've had the double bounties. And at this point, I think we were all just worried what was going to be next. Double XP, double gold, double death's breaths. It was a worrying pattern that was emerging of just doubling stuff. Now, I do like playing lots of different builds. It's always handy to get double bounties. So, no knocking it, no doing it down. I'd love double bounties all the time. In fact, I think this should be as standard in the game about a month into a season, simply because people who are still there after a month are probably playing a lot of different builds. So it would help them an awful lot to get those extra bounties. But in terms of the game, obviously it made no impact on builds, no impact on anything other than, hey, you get twice as many bounties. So if, let's say, you just played one class, probably wasn't that helpful to you, and ultimately, again, probably not really a reason to play, unless, let's say, you just really fancied having a major reforge session at some point in this season. So that's also going to go in D tier. I would much rather have double bounties and double goblins, so it is going to sit above it. Next up, we've got the season of Grandeur. So we've got a free Ring of Royal Grandeur. This obviously was the first season to impact builds, which was pretty cool because the free Rogue affected things. Obviously didn't change any Legacy of Nightmares builds, but any build that used the rework now got an extra free slot. So it was a little bit of power creep. You know, we could work in maybe Convention of Elements or Unity for toughness. I think I played a Barb this season. I remember playing a very cool charge Barb. You just couldn't do off season because with the free rework you were able to work in Focus Restraint and Band of Might. And it did feel really nice actually to play a build that I knew that I could not play this off season without making significant changes to it and without it being much weaker. I mean, obviously the way Diablo 3 works is you can play any build at any time, but to have it effective, competitive, at the kind of top tier of builds and not to be able to do that off season, I think was a really good step in the correct direction. I'm still going to give it, do we give it C tier? Do we give it B tier? What did I write down on my notes? Okay, C tier. I think at the time I probably would have put it in B tier, maybe even A, and say, look, this is good, this is a lot of fun. But I think as we go through the rest of these season themes, I think probably a pretty meh change, because ultimately it's just one free item. Opened up a few build possibilities, but not tons. It wasn't like there was lots and lots of builds. It did open up some, but for most it was just a little bit of extra damage with Convention of Elements or something like that. So the Rogue season, whilst I did enjoy it and have fun, I think looking back, other seasons have just been way better. Now I'd say the first season that I really enjoyed was the Legacy of Nightmares season. This teeny tiny picture here is a picture of the Legacy of Dreams gem, which this season was so popular, this gem came in off the back of it. Whether Blizzard were going to put it in the game anyway, I couldn't tell you. They might well have done. But the Legacy of Nightmares season was brilliant because we got those 2 rings for free. They also got juiced up. There was a whole rework, I think, really improving the power of Legacy of Nightmares builds. So that was basically taking a lot of the builds that in this game traditionally are sets. We have to get 6 pieces of a set to do an awful lot of damage. And to give people the freedom to build whatever it is that they wanted, and giving you extra damage for each individual legendary item that you have. It's always really fun to build Legacy of Nightmare builds at the start of seasons. I guess now we call them Legacy of Dreams builds. This, I remember playing Necromancer, and it was a lot of power for the Necro. Not only had the rings themselves been buffed, but also because Necro's got so much jewellery, it was great to open up those ring slots. I think I played a lot of Nova, and I think I played a lot of Mages. Obviously, it didn't impact set builds, so if you still wanted to play whatever was the best set at the time, it might well have been Veers back then. I've got that in my mind. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But if you did want to play a set, well, it had no impact. But it was really cool, actually, for leveling. Made leveling a character really nice. You could completely bin off the season journey and just get cracking with finding legendaries and building your character. Again, at the time, I think I probably would have put this up towards A or S tier. But again, we've got the benefit of all 27... all 14 season themes to look through. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. It was good. So good, in fact, it did make it into the game. So there's an argument maybe it should be an A tier. But I think, again, looking at maybe some of these other season themes, maybe B is about fair. But it'd be very much at the top of B. Again, I guess the only reason maybe not to put it in A is simply because 90% of the builds in this game are set-based. So it didn't really affect them. But on a personal level, I really enjoyed it. It was great to see this Legacy of Dreams gem get added. Next we had the Triune season, and again, similar to the double pattern, at this point I remember us all being quite worried that we were going to get Season of Convention of Elements, we were going to get Season of whatever item it was, Zodiac or whatever. So it was really nice to see an on-ground effect, which is the Triune rings. So the way this worked is there were 3 rings spawned like an Oculus, so when you kill something, a chance to spawn it. And I think one was cooldown, one was damage reduction, one was power. Lovely, pretty colours. It sounded great to play with to start. It was great. I was having loads of fun. Definitely like up here, A tier. This is great. But after about a week of playing, you realised that there was a couple of problems with them. One, they just weren't very powerful at all. So the power level, power creep was a little bit de minimis. And secondly, it just turned the game into like kind of hopscotch simulator. You were jumping in, jumping out, so you had to jump in. As soon as you saw those rings on the ground, you had to jump in them to do damage. Then you had to try and jump to the next one. And it just became a little bit annoying. So I'm going to put that in the C tier. Definitely not D tier, definitely better than the bounties and the goblins, because it was at least the first kind of elemental ground effect or first gameplay changing mechanic that we had. because up until that point we just had extra free stuff, we just had, you know, rings for free essentially. So it was really cool to see this. Was it better than the Rogue season? I mean, personally I think I had more fun in the Rogue season, but as a season theme I'm going to put it above Rogue, just simply because every single build in the game got to use it, and it was at least something that mixed up the gameplay a little better. Next we have the Season of Eternal Conflict. So this here is a picture of the super secret Diablo kill streak, where 1,000 kills got you this big kill streak where Diablo spawned. There was lots of other kill streaks along the way, and basically this was a ton of fun and a ton of power. Where on my notes, when I put this, I put this in A tier, this one. I think this was around the time they reworked the Whirlwind Barb. I seem to remember playing a lot of Barbarian this season. I mean, similar to the Triune rings, it was an on-screen effect that we got, so it didn't really change any builds, but the on-screen effects, they looked cool. It was great to see all the things raining down, the chests, you know, the fire, all sorts of stuff. It was actually really, really cool. It allowed you to speed farm incredibly quickly, because all you had to do was keep your kill streak up and you would get just baller extra damage. So I think that was a really big hit. I really enjoyed this season, kill streaks. You know, trying to get up to like 50, 100, 250, whatever it was. And obviously the secret bonus of 1,000. That's like a cool little thing in the game. So I think that was a really good, you know, at this point, we're getting really excited for the future. These season themes, they are, you know, there's a general pattern here. They do seem to be getting better, with maybe the slight exception of the Triune rings. Now, the next season, what was it called? It was called the Forbidden Archives, and we got Kanai's Cube open. This was a great season. I loved this in the game. Kanai's Cube, obviously we can extract powers for our builds. You're normally limited to a weapon slot, an armor slot, and a jewelry slot. But this one, the cube was totally open. You could stuff 3 weapons in there, 3 jewelry items, 3 armor pieces, whatever it was that you wanted. This to me is a really good season, very close to getting an S tier. I think maybe we'll only pick one for S tier as the best season in my opinion, but it would be very, very close, because the flexibility of the cube being open opens up all sorts of build possibilities. Maybe not for meta, maybe for meta there was, you know, as always there's always that one thing that does just tons and tons of damage and everybody plays. But again, primarily playing Necro at the time, I just thought it was great. Stuff 3 weapons in there, blow stuff up. It was an awful lot of fun. Made powering up your characters early on very easy, because you could just stick whatever you wanted in the cube. Bounties and key farming were a dream. You had no restrictions on the cube. You could just put whatever you wanted in there, and yeah, it was an awful lot of fun. So this, I think, was probably better than the season before. I would have loved, I mean, a combination of these two things. You know, whether you're a person who prefers the on-screen effects like Triune rings and the kill streaks, whether you prefer things that alter builds. I probably prefer builds, I think, but I mean, if those two things had been combined, wow, that would have been a pretty good season. And next we get to the season of the Trials of the Tempest, I think it was, and this was all about elemental power. Now, I put a picture of a snowball here because this was the snowball meme season, where you basically tried to get the timing of the snowball right to kill the Rift Guardian. I never got into that. That's not how I want to play the game. It just seemed cheesy, and I did not like it. Now, even though it was an on-screen effect, I didn't enjoy it as much as the kill streaks. I found it definitely a lot worse than the cube slots. So I think I'm actually going to put this in C tier. I'm going to put it at the top. I know some people really enjoyed this season, and there was some cool things that you could do with some of the effects. Personally, it just wasn't for me. I didn't like the fact that you had to do things at a set time, hoping for the RNG to try and get the highest clear you could. So I wasn't a massive fan of that one. And now we get to season 22, which is the Shades of the Nephilim. This is definitely S tier season for me. There were 2 things that happened in the season. We got the Shadow Clones, which were a brilliant addition. So when you click the pylon, you got 2 Shadow Clones that fought beside you. They did stuff, they blew up the screen. It was a really cool effect. It was great for leveling. You know, it changed I remember the hype around this for the how we're going to level the characters being just absolutely fantastic. It did an awful lot of damage for speed farming. Pushing, not so much. They really dropped off in the higher GRs, but for speed farming, it was great watching the clones blow things to pieces. But we also got a little bit of cube action with this one, because we didn't get open cube combined. What we did get was a 4th cube slot. So I think at the time I was doing a lot of Bone Spear Necro, because that just absolutely blew stuff up with having an extra cube slot for power, which Necro, you obviously use a weapon. It's just no brainer, so much damage. And again, it made bounties, made key farming, all those things really nice, just simply because of the flexibility to have that extra slot in the cube, and with it being whatever you wanted. And the Shadow Clones doing a lot of heavy lifting for you, it was great. Now this season wasn't completely all plain sailing. I did start grouping around this time, and there was an awful lot of lag on the servers. The Shadow Clones in particular were doing things on hardcore like killing people with reflect damage on spinners, so it wasn't without its problems, but I think this was an S tier season, and simply because we had an elemental effect, the Shadow Clones, which changed the gameplay, gave us something cool to look at and power, plus we then also got the build defining changes of a 4th cube slot, so we kind of got a 2-for-1. It was almost like 2 season themes together, so I'm going to give that S tier. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant season. The next, I think, is called the Disciples of Sanctuary, which was the follower rework. Now, this is a really tricky one where to put in this, because in terms of the game, this was a fantastic change. The followers had a bunch of items that now emanate to your character. So where in these previous seasons I've said, look, this was brilliant because we could do bounties, we could do keys much better. This change to the game allowed all of those things to happen. We could get Nemesis Braces for free, Flavor of Time for free, extra keys, extra Death's Breaths. It was just a brilliant, brilliant change. Extra gems with Broken Crown. But I think if I remember correctly, you could play the follower rework off season. So in terms of a season theme, I'm going to grade it as if it had been... If we just took it to be how the season was, it would be bottom of D tier because there was essentially no season theme. But I think in fairness, I'm going to grade this as if the follower change was seasonal only and that was the season theme. And in that case, I think I'm probably going to put it in B tier. Simply because it probably didn't change any builds. It gave us a big lift on keys, big lift on bounties, and again, Blizzard, this was such a good change. I don't see anybody ever complaining about this, but ultimately in terms of the theme for the season, especially coming off the back of the Shadow Clones and the 4th cube, it did feel a little bit like we were getting extra cube things, but they were restricted to whatever emanated, and they were not that useful for doing tons and tons more damage in rifts, and there wasn't really anything to, no kill streaks, no rings, no Shadow Clones. So it did feel a little bit of a step backwards, that one, and that was season 23. Now we come to season 24 and Ethereals. I think this is probably got to go S tier as well. I know I did say I was only going to pick one, but if you've hung around my videos or when I used to stream, I am an indecisive person. Ethereals were special items, special weapons that you could find. They had just insane stats and power on them. They had special ability powers on them. So you kind of got a loot chase to find the right Ethereal. You had the loot chase to get the right power on it, which was great. You had essentially build changing things going on with the Ethereals. And ultimately, it was just an awful lot of fun. I'm a loot kind of player. I like playing multiple classes because I like finding loot for lots of things. Loot chasing a season is brilliant for me. These hard to find items that you need the right rolls on, you need the right things to drop was great. And it was just so much power. I think at the time this was Inner Monk season. I remember playing a lot of Inner Monk, and with the Ethereals it just absolutely blasted straight out the gate. So again, S tier, maybe the very top of A tier. If I'm really strict with myself and we just put one in, I personally preferred the Shadow Clone 4th cube, but Ethereals was an excellent season. I know a lot of people I know in the game still talk about the Ethereal season, with it being an awful lot of fun and those items. And I think we got actually the reward, which is really cool. We got the cosmetic reward. If you collected all the Ethereals across all the classes, you got to transmog Ethereal weapons forever on your account, which again, I think that's a really cool little reward. So that was good. So as I say, maybe S tier. If I'm going to be strict and just say we're going to have one, I'd put Ethereals at the very top of A tier. So that brings us to the Soul Shards. This was season 25. I think this was a pretty good season. Again, it was similar to the Ethereals in terms of we had the loot chase, we had to find the Soul Shards, we had to rank them up, we had to unlock the correct powers for them. They did have a decent amount of power creep in them, and I think we could use them to augment as well. We could augment gear, which was kind of the first step into making one of the ball achy processes in this game, augmenting your characters out much easier. I think this was a good season. I'm probably going to put it, I'd say, here. It did change builds. It did change how the game worked. It was something new to do, something to collect. I didn't find it as fun as Ethereal, so it's definitely going to be behind then. I think it's probably more fun than the kill streaks, because ultimately I prefer finding things. I prefer build altering season themes. Not as much as the open cube. I think I enjoyed open cube slightly more. Very, very close. It could be either way round, I think, to be fair. But still, season 25 I think was a bit of a banger. But yeah, not quite as good as Ethereals. So we've got two left. Last season, Echoing Nightmares. I mean, again, this is a system that has been added to the game. I think the real problem with the Echoing Nightmares is just the vast amount of XP you got with it. As a system in the game, it goes in S tier. It's brilliant to be able to get something new to do in this game finally after all these years. It's fantastic that it gives you augments to deck out your character. It's great that there's a goblin shrine in there. You can get tons of materials, tons of gems and all those types of things. But ultimately, as a season theme, it wore thin fast, because just the XP you could grind and it was insane, and you ended up just playing these 4 maps over and over again to grind Paragon, because it was the most efficient thing to do. Now hey, you don't have to do it that way, and solo players probably didn't do it that way because you wouldn't have access to the keys. But in terms of a season theme, I'm going to stick it at C tier. I'm going to stick it at the top, because whilst it was a great addition to the game, it just wasn't quite as fun as I had hoped. I think some of the mechanics in there, I still now to this day don't think make sense, like the fact that you can't be immune to fire and avoid damage from the fire explosions. They're physical, it makes no sense to me. But as a season theme, it was quite interesting to find the keys, so we did have a little bit of loot chase, like with the Ethereals and the Soul Shards, but not really that much because you're only finding the keys, and then once you got them, it was a bit of a mad rush to try and get to wave 150. You had to take all the pylons in the same order, and it did get a little bit repetitive. It just wasn't, I think, strong enough as a season theme. If it had been paired with something else, like a 4th cube slot, or something along those lines, then I think it could have been, much better. If we'd had an open cube, obviously it would have been up here. Maybe even just a 4th cube slot would have sent this up to A tier, possibly somewhere around here. But ultimately, I'm going to put that at the bottom-ish of the tier list, top of C tier. And now we come to the current season 27, the Angelic Crucibles. So what do I like about this season? Well, again, it is similar to Echoing Nightmares and similar to Ethereals in a way, somewhere kind of around those two, because you have to find your Angelic Crucibles to power up your items. So there is a loot chase element to it. You have to get the right item, so it's a little bit like Soul Shards. You've got to keep upgrading until you get the correct thing that you want. They do add an awful lot of power, which is pretty good. Ultimately, there's a lot of fun with the builds. It's build changing stuff, so like with the Soul Shards, but more impactful, I think, in terms of builds. So I think in terms of impact on builds, I think we are looking kind of around the Ethereal level, because there's stuff like the Magic Missile Wizard is a lot of fun. The Shockwave Hoser Barb is a lot of fun. Being able to vortex stuff in with Whirlwind on Barb again is pretty fun. I know the Strafe Impale Demon Hunter is very popular. So it is cool to see the builds really being affected by the season theme, and with that being impacted by things you have to find, things you have to build. I do like it. Do I like it more than the open cube? That is a tough one. I certainly think Ethereals were better than the Angelic Crucibles. It's close. These three are pretty close. I think I think I've had more fun this season than Open Cube. Just about. I think there's 3 or 4 builds that I am enjoying playing, but it is difficult because this is the current season and it is hard to separate. We've had a few patch changes. The Meteor Wizard is a lot of fun. That doesn't rely on the season themes. Maybe it goes here. It's a tough one. Open Cube or Angelic Crucibles. I think we'll leave it like this. I think this is what we'll do. We'll put it here towards the middle of A tier. So an excellent season. So that's my tier list. So I guess maybe even the current season isn't in my top 3, which when I phrase it like that surprises me a little because I'm having an absolute blast this season. This is the tier list. The Shadow Clone and 4th Cube I think was the best. That is just, we were spoilt that season for sure. And then in the A tier we've got Ethereals, the Open Cube, Angelic Crucibles and Soul Shards, as well as the Kill Streaks just sneaking in there for me. B tier, some interesting changes to the game that we've got with both of these. The Legacy of Dreams gem coming in after the Lon season, the follow-up update making it in. And then C tier, the Echoing Nightmares. Really was a little bit of a miss. I kind of had hoped that would have been better. I did not like the Elemental season very much, nor the Triune Ring. Rogue was good at the time, but I think, just compare it to what's above it. That's the only reason it's in C tier. And then Double Bounties, Double Goblins. No thank you. No thank you very much. So that's my tier list, guys. What do you think? Where would you put stuff? What would you move around? I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, there's a lot of fun to do. Next season, what are we going to get? Let's hope it's something up here towards S and A. If it's got something to do with build diversity with Cube, brilliant. If it's got some kind of elemental effect, brilliant. If it's got some kind of rare endgame chase item to find, again, brilliant. I've been the Filthy Casual. I thank you very much for listening this long. If you have made it to the end of the video, you are a true hero of Sanctuary. Take it easy. Peace.